So a while ago, we saw the first trailer for the upcoming Kung Fu Panda 4 drop, and I did a bit of a breakdown of that trailer, which you can watch here if you like, and I really thought it looked amazing, as in visually, it was top tier. DreamWorks has really become a bit of a powerhouse in delivering top tier and engaging visuals in recent years, and it is a bit sad they're going to be outsourcing in the near future for their projects, but hey, that's life, and you got to roll with it. But one of the big things I took note of was that in the entire course of the trailer, which serves to advertise a new era for the Kung Fu Panda franchise, the birth of a new trilogy with new adventures and characters, the beginning of Po's journey to retire as the Dragon Warrior and become the new spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, there was not one look at the Furious Five, not one hint, not one sniff, not one measly little frame. And this apparently is explained away by the creators as, oh, they're off on their own adventures, they aren't attached to the hip to Po, etc, etc. They have their own lives, their own goals, their own stories that are playing out off screen, not in this movie. And so this in turn got me to thinking, is this the right choice for the franchise to make? Is this the right direction to take the story and the characters? And I honestly don't know. I'm leaning towards no, but I guess that's what this video today is about, trying to puzzle it all together. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so I really did try to come up with as many good reasons as to why they shouldn't have the Furious Five in this film, and potentially even in the new trilogy at all. The best I could come up with is that it allows you more screen time to develop your fresh characters, of which there seems to be a few. In the trailer itself, Po's putting together a team of misfits and criminals in order to bring down the chameleon, and chief among these is the character voiced by Awkwafina. And this character looks like they're going to be playing the tigress role, the main person that Po talks to, the main person he interacts with. After all, the Furious Five, they're 5 characters, and giving the story separation from these 5 characters does free up lines and storylines that can be used to flesh out the world and Po's relationships with the newbies. And for the life of me, that's all I could think of for positives. I know, right? You'd think there'd be more. Really scraping the barrel here, but maybe from a business perspective, the voices for the Furious Five probably have a higher asking price than the majority of the criminals and the low-life voice actors that are replacing them in the story. I mean, I'm sure Angelina Jolie is very expensive. Who else we got? Lucy Liu, maybe. Seth Rogen, probably. Jackie Chan, almost certainly. These are pretty big names. I can see wanting to free up a bit of the budget after taking a look at these. But is that it? Is that the only net benefit? Because from the other side of things, they are actually very marketable names. Big draws. So surely they're worth the money that you're going to pay them in that regard. And so I think it cancels itself out, right? But then at the same time, I feel like you can also cancel out the idea that the Furious Five not appearing would give so much more time to develop new characters, or rather, that the Furious Five appearing would cut time from these new characters, because it wouldn't. That's simply not the case, as realistically, the Furious Five, across the board, have only really been around for a couple of throwaway lines in 2 and 3. And then they get absolutely pummeled by the bad guys to make the bad guys look strong and for Po to look outnumbered. And therefore, he looks all the more powerful and impressive for being able to overcome the odds and get the victory. And so in that vein, would it not make much more sense to just straight up include them? Even if they're just there to get pummeled into oblivion by the chameleon and make her look strong? Like, we know they're a big deal on screen. We see them wallop low-tier goons, and we have 3 films worth of understanding of them being martial arts masters. They're not on the level of Po, or most of the villains they have to contend with, but regardless, they're still considered forces of nature, and the story doesn't take them lightly. So when they lose, it does mean more than some random new guy number 2 getting beaten, which is what's going to happen here. And so that makes Po's story more compelling, because overall, it is his story. It's Kung Fu Panda, so he's going to get the win. I just think it makes more sense. But then on top of that, like I said, they rarely actually figure into the majority of the movie. It's mostly just Tigress that's mega involved in the overarching plot, as she's the most powerful, she's the coolest, and she's the most important member of the Furious Five. And she's also probably Po's closest friend amongst the group too, at least as far as what you see on screen in the films. And so, would their presence in a few throwaway scenes really draw that much time away from new characters? They've been in the films previously, and yet they've been able to develop a lot of memorable characters outside of them that were featured in those movies, like Po's dad, for instance, as in the Panda one. So it can be done, and DreamWorks have proven themselves quite capable of doing so. So I still think it's a very odd decision. But those are not the only marks against DreamWorks for excluding the Furious Five. And I'll be real here, when I say the Furious Five, I'm mostly talking Tigress. The others are cool too, don't get me wrong, but as I said, she's the megastar of the group that's held up as Po's equal in some respects, and certainly she's his definitive second in command when they go on adventures. And so I think that the film is very much going to feel her absence more than any other character, because for starters, it's clear that outside of Master Shifu and his dad, as in Mr. Ping, Po doesn't have a closer bond with anybody except Tigress. And whilst these two are going to be in the film a little bit, they're in the trailer, it won't have that same vibe because ultimately they're filling a parental role, a mentor role. But Tigress doesn't fill that same role for Po. She's much more of a peer, a sounding board. She has a different type of relationship where she can far more easily tell him how it is and interact with him in a way that helps the story flow a bit better. And on top of that, the two characters have really good chemistry. They're enjoyable to watch together. They have good moments, great banter. And this does include the other members of the five when I mention this sort of thing. The way they interact with Po, the history they have, their personalities, it leaves a massive gaping hole within the film and the character dynamics and the personal relationships. And you might be thinking, but oh, you can fill that tigress-shaped hole with a new character, voiced by Awkwafina. And then there's all the other thugs you can replace. That'll be the rest of the five. And with the rest of the five being replaced by thugs, yeah, that's honestly probably true. You could delete them from the story and replace them with a couple of comic relief characters that only have a few lines, and it'll be exactly the same. The level to which 4 of the 5 are major players in the overall narrative is somewhat overblown by the fandom sometimes, at least in the films. I know they have a larger role to play in the shows, and they do get fleshed out a great deal more significantly, but, you know, that's the shows, not the movies. But I do think that Tigress is the one that you can't replace, because she has that chemistry with Po that if you try to replicate, you just end up with a copycat character that would be completely pointless. But also, this new character doesn't have the same history with Po. And so you have to build that from scratch. You just have Po alongside a whole bunch of new and different characters that you don't know at all. And so it's far less interesting. This is a huge deal because Po is being told he has to move past the role of Dragon Warrior and become a leader instead. He has to stay in the temple, convene with the spirits, that type of thing. But that's a lot of character upheaval. And you want to see how his friends are going to react to that kind of news, but they're not there. And so you miss out on a good couple of heart-to-heart scenes with Tigress that would be called for in this situation, learning to accept his new reality through the help of his old friends. But instead, he's going to have to learn to accept it through this new friendship. And I can accept that, I guess. It'll end up being fine, I'm sure. But I think it'll be far more satisfying from a narrative point of view to also have Tigress along for the ride. On top of that, this new character doesn't look like the straight man type character. The Tigress-Po duo works so well because one is mega goofy and the other is mega serious. That is a dynamic that is tried and tested. It's a classic across time and space. If everybody's being silly and stupid, it quickly gets oversaturated and far less funny than it was before. So I'm just a little bit salty, I guess, that the Furious 5 are not going to be in the upcoming movie. It's not the end of the world. I think it will still be a very good movie and it's still going to make money. And I guess there's always the subsequent 2 films in the trilogy to bring them back, but still. Come on, DreamWorks. Do better. And so, with all that being said, that's the end of the video, and I would like to remind you that these have just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about the presence of the Furious 5 in this new trilogy of Kung Fu Panda? Do you think I'm right? Should they bring them back? Or do you think they can stay gone and it'll be fine? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.